The Jarl of Whiterun, I feel like, is vastly misunderstood. Not because Jarl Balgruuf is somehow some evil secret villain that nobody has figured out in the last 15 years. That's not at all what I'm saying. In fact, he is accurately understood to be a firm, courageous, loyal leader of his people and to those of Skyrim. Those things I absolutely agree with. However, where this starts to take a turn is actually stopping there. And I don't feel like we have always understood what he truly represents as far as leadership is concerned. A lot of things that I feel like are not quite highlighted. And I think a lot of his dialogue shapes a lot of this, actually. And there's a lot of parallels that we can point toward that also show us what these things look like in the real world. He's, in fact, usually thought of as the most likable Jarl in all of Skyrim, even. Most people find that he is a great leader and that he is intelligent and that he is culturally based. He is a leader for the Nordic people, yet he also sides with the Empire.
No doubt General Tullius and his friends in the Empire will tell you that I owe them my loyalty. And perhaps I do.
Which most players of Skyrim also do as well. So there also might be a little bias built into that. But some things that I think all of us agree on, no matter whether you like him, dislike him, Stormcloak, or Empire, most of us see him as a man who is indecisive. Some might view that as a weakness. He is a Jarl who refuses to choose a side when everything around him is burning and full of destruction.
If it's the war you're referring to, I'm on the side of Whiterun.
We can look at the Civil War, we can look at the Dragon Chaos, we can look at the lurking in the shadow Thalmor, whom he especially despises, probably above all else.
That woman and her Thalmor justiciars have caused nothing but problems for the people of Skyrim.
Remember the last time
I am not.
Couldn't agree more.
I have no more taste for Thalmor wine than I do for Thalmor company. What is more, I'm away from the hold at a time when there are dragons and stormcloaks on the loose.
You see, in this decision making, his indecisiveness, this interpretation lacks something important. He's not struggling because he lacks conviction. In extensive dialogue with him and looking over all the pieces of information available, he doesn't struggle with that. He knows right from wrong. He's struggling because he understands the cost of this conviction better than anyone else and probably all of Skyrim and most of us. In Skyrim or real life, this is not rewarded at all. It's in fact punished. And sometimes his convictions, he acts more decisively. I think of the first example when it's him deciding to send the detachment of guards to Riverwood at once to protect from a possible dragon attack.
By while a dragon burns my hold and slaughters my people. Irileth, send a detachment to Riverwood at once.
Yes, my Jarl.
If you'll excuse me.
He doesn't debate long. He doesn't philosophize. He basically just brushes off the possible message that it could send to Falkreath, that they might view it as a sort of escalation, which, let me just throw this out there because I probably will talk about it more one day. There might be a little bit of a hidden tension between Whiterun and Falkreath. I think a lot we can actually derive from that specific moment.
Provocation. He'll assume we're preparing to join Ulfric's side and attack him. We should not.
Enough! I'll not stand idly by while a dragon burns my hold and slaughters my people.
But anyway, this is sort of something that tells us that he reacts like someone who his first instinct is protection. And we see this when he does decide to be decisive. He's not a warrior leader archetype like Ulfric. He is an administrator of survival, is how I'm approaching this. He governs things like the food supply and trade stability that he also mentions directly. Things like refugee safety from the Civil War, and he is also balancing things like political pressure.
Every day he deals with obsequious functionaries and incompetent bureaucrats. Sadly, I'm not allowed to eliminate them. Well, not yet anyway.
And then Skyrim introduces dragons, and now his job becomes impossible. This is what responsibility overload looks like in real leadership. I think of parents under crisis, whether it's from their newborn children or other family pressures around them. Managers under business collapse when everything is burning around them and they're going under. Caregivers making irreversible decisions daily. When everything matters, when everything is on the line, and there are real consequences that you have been able to discern, hesitation in that decision making is not weakness, it's cognition overload. We all struggle with this, or at least a lot of us. Bethesda has designed this Jarl of Whiterun so human. And going over all this, this is one of the biggest things that I've noticed. In his dialogue, he commonly says that he is on the side of Whiterun above all else. He does enjoy being part of the Empire structure, and yet he does also empathize with the Nordic traditions that is especially highlighted in the Stormcloak Rebellion. But above all else, he does recognize that perhaps he shows or owes both of them his loyalty. He knows that this is also true, so then he takes a neutrality stance that above all else he is on the side of Whiterun.
The day might come when I am forced to draw my sword for one side or the other. But that day has not come yet.
And everyone around him seems to be certain, especially his advisor. He especially seems to be certain. He has his own opinions that he constantly throws at the Jarl. Yet he constantly resists.
We should not.
That's your job as steward, isn't it? Why do you trouble me with these details?
And so why is this? After all, that is his advisor. Well, I think Jarl Balgruuf is the only one who's consistently thinking, what happens after I choose? Not necessarily what is right, but he asks, what breaks afterward? After I make these decisions, what is the consequence? This indecision that we are interpreting is often misunderstood. But in reality, these things are more like high empathy and high consequence awareness and aversion to irreversible harm. He doesn't lack belief, is what I'm saying. He just has too many competing beliefs that he knows will all cost lives. Think of hospital medical triage decisions. What people need seen first and treated with the most care quick, I guess is a pretty good way I can put it. CEOs during layoffs. Moral injury in leadership roles. The more that you understand consequences, the harder simple decisions become. No CEO wants to just lay off people for the fun of it. It's usually because there is a plethora of decisions and consequences before them, and though it's very unfortunate and I would argue harmful, it's not treated lightly. In fact, it often does come with a lot of hesitation. Let's look at things like the Talos ban enforcement dilemma, which he does speak on a bit. He refuses to aggressively purge the worshippers at the possible expense of his own leadership. At the end of the day, it is a law that is enforced by the Thalmor from the White Gold Concordance.
I have no fear, for Talos is my ally, and I am his prophet. His word is upon my lips, his voice in my throat.
And failure to adhere to that possibly bears things like Thalmor witch hunts that, again, Balgruuf mentions that are always a possibility within his walls. He's existing somewhere between imperial law and Nord identity and civil stability. He doesn't become a zealot, and he also is not becoming a rebel. He's becoming something a little bit more unstable. He is a ruler who disagrees with authority, but he's fearing what happens if he breaks it. He does not enforce the Talos ban with enthusiasm, but he also does not openly defy it. Why is this? Well, it's because he understands something that ideological characters don't. Rebellion always has a second-order consequence. And this is the moral compromise under systems that you don't fully agree with. workplace ethics under corporate policy, or governance under flawed institutions. Choosing the least destructive compliance is what's basically happening. Sort of how I'm looking at Jarl Balgruuf is that he's not loyal to any specific party or faction or people group outside of his walls, but he is constrained. And I think this tension is real, and though it doesn't necessarily get spoken on directly anyway in Skyrim, there are a lot of things surrounding it that we can sort of point to. For example, we can look at his dialogue between him and essentially his bodyguard, Irileth. And she points out that he is frequently spotted at the Bannered Mare, where he is going down there and he's drinking. And I don't think he's necessarily some sort of drunkard or he's struggling in that regard. I don't think that's what's being said here. But it is implied that these are secret little adventures, per se. That he is going down there and he doesn't speak to anyone in the palace about it. He doesn't let anyone know. He just goes and doesn't feel the need to tell anyone.
These secret visits to the tavern will make you an easy target for an enemy assassin. You should have told me first.
Damn it, woman, I'm the Jarl of Whiterun. I won't apologize for talking to my people.
But why? I think it's sort of a form of escapism, where him going down there, grabbing a pint or two, in his own words, and interacting with his people. And though we might look at this and say, this is a leader who just loves being with his people and loves talking with them, that's definitely what's happening. But also, when you're with friends, are you really thinking about all the stresses of the world around you? Are you thinking about the biggest pressing matters that are on your heart? Not necessarily. I think when you're with good friends and you're having a good time and you're just talking about whatever, it is a form of escapism. When we're with those that we love, we're not necessarily thinking, woe is me, and thinking about what's dragging me down and all the troubles of the world. I think that he is seeking environments where he's not performing authority. In the Bannered Mare, there's no court pressure, there's no advisors, there's no war council tone, and there's no civil war, and he doesn't have a title. He's just a man in a room, in an inn. He's just a friend. And places like the Bannered Mare, inns, they become psychologically significant that I haven't touched on a ton in my videos, but they do frequent in a lot of my videos because they do represent something significant. In Skyrim, they are places of social normalcy. They are identity relief and reduced cognition burden. It's where people go to sort of forget about all the troubles they went through during the day, and they get to escape that for a little bit. It's why we play video games after a long, hard day of work, right? We get to do something fun that just takes our mind off of things. And people in high responsibility roles, they often spend time in non-role specific places. They gravitate toward low expectation environments. It's why people in power, for some reason, just love golf. I don't know why, but I think for some reason things like golf and activities like that, they sort of bring out that escapism feel. You don't have to focus on anything but what's in front of you, is what I'm saying. And it's not literal escape, it's figurative escape. It's just relief from role saturation. And with his relationship with Irileth, I think there's actually also a lot more to this, because you can quite see that between his dialogue with Preventus, technically his official advisor, who is to advise him on high strategic decisions, things like that, but his housecarl, a Dunmer by the name of Irileth, immediately it is quite obvious his relationship with her is quite different. It's of a higher trust. You see this during the dragon attack and her authority in his court. Balgruuf is delegating decisively where the trust is absolute. He's not micromanaging or dismissing Irileth like he does Preventus. In fact, he's actually relying on her in a lot of different ways. Balgruuf is not incapable of decision making, but he is selective about where he offloads some of his authority, and he places a lot of that authority into Irileth. And I wonder if this has anything to do with the fact that Preventus, this advisor who I think is really kind of a phony in a way. After you talk to his daughter, which is a local blacksmith, funny enough, she actually tells you that what her father advises to the Jarl is really what she advises to her father. So there's this sort of weird dynamic.
Have you met my father? He's a steward up at Dragon's Reach. I help my father in more ways than people realize. You think all the counsel my father provides the Jarl is his alone? Huh. Let's just say I advise the advisor, and leave it at that.
And I wonder if the Jarl has actually caught onto this, so then therefore he gives very little weight to what Preventus says. But anyway, she is a person of trust to him. And he is someone who compresses trust into very few people. He clearly doesn't trust his advisor. I mean, I wish we could see more of that relationship, but obviously it's a game that was made 15 years ago, and, you know, for whatever reason they didn't flesh it out more. But nonetheless, it's clear that he delegates survival critical tasks to only those who he deems as trusted agents, that being you, the Dragonborn, and Irleth. Really the only two people he treats with a trust and respect that even his own advisor doesn't have. For example, during the Dragon Trap quests, when it's approaching a little bit toward the end of the main quest line, and the only way to find Alduin is by trapping one of his dragons into Dragon's Reach itself. That way you can actually find where to go to Sovngarde. And within the dragon trapping quest decision, and risking city safety, Balgruuf finally chooses risk. And it's not because he just becomes decisive, but it is because external pressure is removing neutrality as an option. The Civil War was never something that he was decisive about until it was quite literally at his front doorstep. He's not evolving into a different man. The world stops allowing his coping strategy. That's what's happening here. He can't be neutral because it's not one of the available choices anymore. And Balgruuf, he's often called indecisive, and in a sense that is correct. But there's so much more to that, because this assumes leadership is about certainty, and that some may refer to him as someone as a poor leader because he is indecisive, because he's not always quick to act. But in reality, most meaningful decisions are made under uncertainty, not clarity. Balgruuf represents something closer to actual real human leadership that we don't see in movies or shows or video games. He is aware of the consequences. He thinks about 5 years down the road. He is resistant to ideology, and he's emotionally burdened by the responsibility so much that he has to offload in the evenings and go down to the local inn to escape. He seeks normalcy within his authority. He's forced into action by circumstances rather than pure ambition. I think Balgruuf has really developed into my favorite leader or Jarl in all of Skyrim. Not because it's cliche, and not because he's the default choice, and because he just appears good on the outside, but it's because he's representing for what I believe Bethesda has imputed real leadership into someone who he's just a good picture of that. I don't really know what more to add to that. And this is something that I have not always understood Balgruuf. And yes, I've always liked him as a leader and as a Jarl, but the reasons for that have changed. I used to think, oh, it's just because he's a good guy. And he doesn't torment his people, and he's not a child king, like we see in other Jarls in Skyrim. And if you've already liked Jarl Balgruuf as your favorite Jarl and leader in Skyrim, great. Maybe this even reinforces why you like him even more. But for people on the edge, for people maybe on the fence a little bit, maybe this is something that could have just swayed you just a little bit. And while there are some compelling theories out there about a more dark history of Jarl Balgruuf, especially in connection with his previous wives, I'm not really here today to talk about those things. And while I think those are great to talk about, very entertaining, there are already great videos out there to talk about those things. And I'm not really here to talk about his family history. With the Jarl Balgruuf, I'm just talking about his psychological makeup and his leadership ability. And I think he's a very good parallel to what we actually see outside of Skyrim. Because at some point, most of us should realize that certainty in our decision making is only easy when we can see what's ahead and that we can bear those consequences, or that the certainty is easy when we're not responsible for the outcome. Jarl Balgruuf is responsible for the outcome. No matter what side he chooses, no matter what decisions he makes, he is going to be there to see what happens afterward, and he doesn't like either side. And I think that's what we've misunderstood about him just a little bit. If you enjoyed the video, a like and subscription is always appreciated. I do have YouTube memberships open if you want to choose to support the channel in that way. Otherwise, I will catch you guys in the next one. See ya.